I told one lie at 8:13 a.m. on a Tuesday, and then spent 6 years trying to make it look true. I said a vendor invoice was late when it was actually missing because my boss had forgotten to sign it. He smiled like I'd moved a piano for him. "You saved me," he said. It felt harmless. It wasn't. My name's Andrew, and I'm the guy who remembers passwords no one else wrote down. I'm the one who resets the router, translates finance for engineers, and keeps the petty cash in a box that looks like a lunch tin. The company builds noise monitoring systems for highways, glamorous as a laundromat, stable as a church pew. I was 28 when I joined, single, good at spreadsheets, bad at conflict. My boss, Mark Elder, shook my hand in the interview and said, "You're going to make my life easier." I thought it was a compliment. The first year was normal: budgets, purchase orders, snacks for late nights, those hollow team emails about family. Mark wasn't cruel. He just moved fast and expected the world to fall in behind him. When it didn't, he pointed at me. "Andrew will figure it out." I liked being useful. Useful felt safe. The second year, the signatures started slipping. "Cue up my initials," he'd say, tossing me a folder at 6:55 p.m. when the office was already dark. "It's the same rate as last quarter," or "we have verbal approval." Phrases that sounded like seatbelts. I'd wait for the fax, the email, the missing attachment that would make it all clean. Sometimes it arrived. Sometimes it didn't. And I told myself a story. I was smoothing edges, not changing shapes. Everyone fudges deadlines. Everyone rounds. The lie that stuck lived in column J, where I annotated a vendor credit that didn't exist because a sensor shipment failed. QC. Mark leaned in my doorway and said, "If we book the credit this month, we don't spook the board before the roadshow." He said roadshow like a school play. I typed it. Temporary, I told myself. Reversing entry next month. I set a calendar reminder called Fix. You already know how calendar reminders go. Meetings slide. People get sick. A truck knocks down an internet line and everyone works from their phones like it's the apocalypse. The entry stayed. It didn't look like a bruise. It looked like a number that fit. HR back then was one person who brought in Costco muffins and asked how we were feeling about Q3. Nobody asked to see the supporting docs. The finance director had a new baby and timed his days around daycare pickup. "Close enough," he'd say, signing on the corner of my printouts. Close enough carried us through 2 audits, 3 product launches, and a string of small accidents that always seemed to happen when Mark needed them. A lost receipt here, a duplicate invoice there, a warehouse count off by 1 pallet. That fixed itself when no one looked too hard. I wasn't blind. I was tired. There's a difference that matters when you're living it. I'd sit in the quiet office after everyone left, buzzing with the slow fluorescent hum, and reconcile bank statements with the concentration of a surgeon. Every time I found a dollar that didn't match, I treated it like a moral test I could still pass. I kept notes. I kept everything. Mark called me the archive, like a joke, and I laughed because jokes are how you survive tiny cuts. The third year, we landed a state contract, big enough to put the company in the paper. Mark brought champagne into the break room and talked about legacy. He hugged me. "I hate hugs at work," he whispered. "You're my right hand." And I felt my stomach drop in a way I ignored. With big contracts come retainers, deposits, performance bonds, money with strings. Strings tangle. "Hold the deposit in a separate tab," he said. "I'll tell you when to apply it." We didn't, at least not when we should have. The string tightened. It wasn't just money. It was tone. If I raised a question, Mark answered with warmth, cranked up a notch too high. "Buddy, you worry like a poet." If I insisted on a detail, he'd drop his voice and talk about the team, about payroll, about how late he and I stayed when everyone else went home. The company became a room we were holding up between our shoulders, and I believed him because it made simple sense. If we failed, all my late nights would have been for nothing. There's a special kind of cowardice that hides inside loyalty. I wore it like a uniform. Year 4, we got a new HR director, Julie Hoffman. She had the opposite vibe of muffins. Former auditor, posture like a ruler. She listened more than she talked. On her second week, she stopped by my desk while I was eating cereal from a paper cup. "Can you walk me through vendor onboarding?" she asked. Completely normal question. Completely normal morning. The spoon shook a little in my hand. I showed her the form, the policy, the exception list. She didn't react, didn't nod or frown. "And exceptions are approved by CFO or Mark?" I said too quickly. "Depending." She wrote nothing down. "Thanks." Little things started to change. She asked for copies of W-9s. She wanted segregation of duties on wire transfers. I told myself it was a phase. New boss, energy. Mark rolled his eyes at her in meetings and slipped me our Post-its that said NBD, like we were passing notes in class. He was a good communicator when communication needed to be a blanket over a fire. The conversation that should have stopped everything happened in an empty conference room with a glass wall that turned us into aquarium fish. "You booked a credit without a credit memo," Julie said, tapping a line on a printout. Her voice wasn't accusing. It was flat. "I was told to expect it," I replied, because that sentence had worked 100 times. "By who?" "Mark." The way she looked at me then wasn't cruel. It was like she was measuring something I couldn't see. "Andrew, do you have the email?" I didn't. I had a note in my notebook, my tidy archive of instructions that are useless because they're mine. I felt heat climb my neck. "We'll get the memo," I said too loud because loud sounds decisive. "We'll fix it in the next close." She read my face like a page and set the printout down. Okay. Not a threat. Not consent. Just okay. We didn't talk for a week. Not about that. She stood in doorways and watched how things moved. She asked the AP clerk about dual approvals, the warehouse manager about receiving logs, the project lead about change orders. At night, I scrubbed spreadsheets until the cells blurred and told myself I still knew where the lines were. That was the lie that kept me sleeping. I knew. Before the end of that quarter, I found a contract amendment in the shared drive that used my initials to justify a rush payment we had no business making. It was my font, my shorthand, my abbreviation for reviewed that I never shared with anyone. Except, apparently, I had. I walked it to Mark. He laughed, the sound rich and easy like a radio host. "Andrew, welcome to corporate. People copy what works?" "Did you sign this?" I asked. He took the paper, glanced once, set it down. "Do you trust me?" The question came out so soft I almost missed the shape of it. I didn't answer. He patted the air, that fatherly motion I hated. "We're fine. Stop letting HR spook you." That night, I couldn't make the numbers tie. Not the usual rounding noise. Something that pulsed like a heartbeat under the ledger. Steady and wrong. I went home, opened my laptop at my kitchen table, and stared at a simplified version I keep for sanity checks. The pulse was still there. I closed the laptop. I told myself to sleep. I told myself I was tired. I told myself I'd fix it in the morning. In the morning, Julie was waiting in my cube when I walked in, early enough that the lights were still waking up. No preface, no smile. She handed me a thin folder, and there was something in her face I hadn't seen before. A kind of careful urgency. "Andrew," she said, and it was the first time she used my name like a life preserver, "I need you to read this and then do exactly what I say." I opened the folder. I saw my initials where they shouldn't be. A wire approval I didn't remember, and a vendor name I'd never onboarded tied to a PO that looked like ours if you glanced and not if you looked. My stomach went cold in a way that felt like truth. Julie's voice didn't rise. "You need to call the police." I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I could hear the soda machine humming in the kitchen and someone's desk plant ticking against the air vent. I thought about how one lie can be a bridge you cross without noticing, and then one day you look down and there's no ground, just a drop you can finally see. But that was just the beginning. When I hung up the phone that morning, My hands were still shaking. The words, "call the police," echoed like an alarm I couldn't turn off. Julie didn't say it as a threat. She said it as if she were describing the weather. Calm, factual, inevitable. I didn't call. I couldn't. Not yet. I just sat there, staring at my own signature on a document I didn't remember signing. Mark walked into the office 20 minutes later, coffee in hand, smile already loaded. "You look like you've seen a ghost," he said. I wanted to tell him everything. That HR was digging, that they'd found something, that maybe it was over. But the habit of silence was older than honesty. "Didn't sleep?" I muttered. He grinned. "You've got to stop worrying so much, Andrew. Stress kills." He said it like a joke. But when he squeezed my shoulder, it felt like a warning. I spent the rest of that day pretending to work. Every click of the mouse sounded like a confession. I reread every email, every approval, every instruction from him that had ever made me hesitate. It was all there, the pattern I hadn't wanted to see. A small vendor name that appeared just before every quarter close. The same bank routing numbers split across multiple invoices. The same voice on the phone claiming to be from logistics, all tied to Mark's projects, all approved by me. At noon, Julie called me into her office. Her blinds were half closed, light cutting across her face like prison bars. "Andrew," she said, "do you understand what's happening?" I tried to answer, but nothing came out. She slid a stack of papers toward me. Wire transfers, signatures, internal memos. All of them had my name on them. All of them pointed straight at me. I began. "I know," she said quickly, "but the auditors won't. The system shows you as the originator. Every approval trail leads to your login." My throat felt tight. "He told me to process them." "Who?" she asked, even though she already knew. "Mark." Julie sighed, not angry, not surprised. "We need to bring this to legal before it gets any worse. Do not delete anything. Do not edit anything. I've already secured copies of the ledgers." "Wait," I said, panic creeping in. "Are you reporting this to the board?" She looked at me steadily. "It's not my call anymore." For the first time in years, I saw what I looked like through someone else's eyes. Not a victim, not a loyal employee, just a man too scared to draw a line. When I got home that night, I poured whiskey into a coffee mug and opened my personal laptop. There were over 4,000 emails between Mark and me. I searched for the first one he'd ever sent. "Welcome aboard, Andrew," and then scrolled down year by year. The language shifted. "Thanks, champ," became "need this now." "Appreciate your help" became "don't make this complicated." Somewhere along the way, I stopped being his employee and became his insurance policy. My inbox was a graveyard of excuses. Temporary fix. Pending adjustment. To be reversed next quarter. All the lies I'd told myself lined up like soldiers ready to testify against me. I barely slept. Every noise outside sounded like a knock on the door. At 3 a.m., I started drafting my resignation letter. I didn't send it. Fear isn't loud. It's heavy. It just sits on your chest until you forget what breathing feels like. The next morning, Mark called me into his office. His tone was light, but his eyes weren't. "Julie's been poking around," he said, spinning a pen between his fingers. "Don't panic. I'll handle it." "How?" I asked. "She's ambitious. Ambition makes people reckless. We just need to remind her who signs her checks." He leaned forward. "Andrew, I need you to trust me. Delete any drafts, backups, personal copies. Clean the drive. This will blow over." I stared at him. "You forged my signature." He froze for a second, just long enough for the mask to slip, then smiled again. "If I did, it's because you're the only one I can trust to make things right. You've always been my guy." That sentence, "my guy," hit like a slap. I realized then that I didn't exist outside his usefulness. I was part of the machine, not a person in it. When I got back to my desk, Julie was waiting. "We need to talk privately," she whispered. We walked to the parking lot, standing between two cars under the gray winter sky. "He's trying to cover his tracks," she said. It found deletion requests queued under your login, scheduled for tonight. I didn't. I know you didn't. But once they run, the audit trail's gone. I wanted to scream. What do I do? She looked at me, calm, deliberate. You keep quiet, you act normal, and you let us handle it. But Andrew, she paused, lowering her voice. If he senses you're cooperating, he'll turn on you. Fast. That evening, Mark called a casual team meeting. He smiled through the entire thing, cracked jokes, bought pizza. Everyone laughed, but between slices his eyes kept finding mine, steady and cold. Afterward, he handed me a small USB drive. Backup files, he said. Keep them off the network. I went home and plugged it in. Not backup files. Copies of contracts, payments, fake vendor invoices. All doctored to look legitimate, all signed by me. My stomach dropped, and then my phone buzzed. A message from Julie. Don't come to work tomorrow. Legal's involved. My heart raced. I looked back at the screen, at the forged invoices, at my own name. I realized this was no longer about saving a job. This was about saving myself. I deleted nothing. I made copies of everything. Emails, logs, the fake contracts. I uploaded them to a cloud drive under a fake account. For the first time in 6 years, I didn't ask permission. When dawn came, I sat in my car outside the office. The parking lot was empty, the air still. For a second, I almost turned the key and drove away for good. But guilt doesn't let you run clean. It clings to you like smoke. I walked in, one step at a time, to face whatever waited inside. And then silence, the kind that means something's gone wrong. The office didn't sound right that morning. Too quiet, too still. No chatter from sales, no printer humming, no Mark whistling through the corridor like he owned the air. When the elevator doors opened, I saw 2 people I didn't recognize, sitting in the lobby. A man in a gray suit, a woman with a clipboard. HR, legal. Julie appeared from the hallway. Her face was calm, but her eyes weren't. Andrew, she said softly, come with me. The conference room smelled like stale coffee and fear. Files spread across the table like open wounds. Invoices, emails, contracts. Screenshots of my login timestamps. The man in the suit introduced himself as Mr. Benton, outside counsel. He didn't waste time. Mr. Larson, we're conducting an internal investigation into financial irregularities connected to several vendor payments under your authorization. He said it like a surgeon announcing a diagnosis. Neutral. Irreversible. I opened my mouth, but Julie cut in. Andrew's been cooperating since last night, she said. Her tone was firm, protective. I realized she'd already told them about the USB, about the documents, about everything. Mr. Benton nodded. We've reviewed the evidence. The scope is significant. Approximately $400,000 misallocated over multiple years. My stomach clenched. It wasn't me. No, he said, flipping the page. But your digital signature appears across all transactions, and your manager, Mr. Elder, is unreachable. Unreachable? That word hit like an ice bath. Unreachable how? I asked. His phone's disconnected. We checked his apartment. Empty. Car gone. According to HR, he requested emergency leave late last night. Julie looked at me. He knew. The next hour blurred. Questions, documents, timelines. They asked about every approval, every password, every instruction Mark ever gave me. I answered until my voice cracked. Benton's pen moved constantly, an endless whisper of ink. Finally, he closed the folder and said, This case is beyond internal review. We've contacted the authorities. The word authorities echoed the same way police had a few days earlier. I left the conference room hollowed out. As I passed through the open office, the world looked tilted. Co-workers whispering, screens freezing mid-refresh. Someone pretending to type while watching me in the reflection of a monitor. The shame wasn't loud. It was quiet and complete. At noon, 2 detectives arrived. They didn't handcuff me. They didn't need to. You're not under arrest, one said, but we'll need you to come down to the station to make a formal statement. Julie walked beside me as I left the building. "They'll find him, Andrew," she said. "Mark can't hide forever." But she sounded like she was trying to convince herself. At the station, I sat in a small beige room that smelled like dust and cold coffee. A tape recorder clicked on. The detective, a woman named Ruiz, leaned forward. "Tell me everything. Start with the first thing you ever did that didn't feel right." It's strange how easy confession becomes once there's nothing left to lose. I told her about the fake credits, the late invoices, the forged initials, the blind trust. I told her how Mark would call me his guy, and how those words made me feel both chosen and trapped. When I finished, she exhaled slowly. "You realize this could have gone a lot worse," she said. "If you deleted evidence, you'd be sitting here as a suspect, not a witness." I nodded. My mouth was dry. "Do you think you'll catch him?" "We'll try," she said. "But people like your boss don't usually run without a plan." That night, I couldn't go home. I drove aimlessly until the city blurred into highway lights and cold rain. Every billboard, every radio ad, every passing car felt like background noise to a life that had already ended. I stopped at a rest area, sat in my car, and opened my phone. My inbox was full. Coworkers asking if I was okay. LinkedIn messages from recruiters pretending to check in. One email from Mark. Subject: "You did the right thing, kid." The body of the email was empty, just a signature. M. I don't know why, but that single line broke something inside me. He wasn't hiding. He was watching. I forwarded the email to Detective Ruiz immediately. Then I sat there, hands trembling, watching the wipers smear rain across the windshield. That night, I realized I'd spent 6 years protecting a ghost, a man who existed only through my willingness to make him real. The next morning, the police raided one of Mark's storage units. Inside, they found boxes of shredded invoices, old hard drives, and a duffel bag with a passport under another name. But what froze me when Ruiz showed me the photos was the last item in the box, a flash drive with my name written on masking tape. "Looks like he planned to leave you behind," she said. "This drive contains emails between him and offshore accounts. He was setting you up as the fall guy." I stared at the photos, the fake identity, the trail he'd built over my name. "He used me like a firewall," I whispered. Ruiz nodded. "You covered for him too well." That afternoon, they issued a warrant for his arrest. The story hit the local news that night. Engineering CFO accused of embezzlement and fraud. Employee cooperation leads to investigation. They blurred my face, but I recognized myself in the silhouette. When Julie called, her voice was calm but heavy. "You did the right thing, Andrew," she said. "You stopped him." "I didn't stop him," I said. "He stopped needing me." I hung up before she could respond. That night, I sat in my dark apartment, surrounded by the hum of appliances, the faint ticking of my wall clock. 6 years of my life were gone, not stolen, just spent on the wrong person. I poured another glass, stared at my reflection in the window, and finally said it out loud to no one. That night, I stopped being the hero. 2 weeks later, the world had gone back to pretending nothing happened. The office reopened under a new interim director. My keycard still worked, though no one expected me to show up. But I did, partly out of habit, partly because I didn't know where else to go. My cubicle smelled like old paper and burnt coffee. Someone had taken my chair. My nameplate was gone. Julie met me by the elevators. "You shouldn't be here," she said gently. "I know," I replied. "I just wanted to see it." She hesitated, then handed me an envelope. Inside was a formal letter. Termination without prejudice. I was free, at least on paper. "Legal wanted to give you closure," she said. "The company's cooperating fully with the investigation. You're not under any suspicion anymore." I nodded. The words slid off like rain. Freedom didn't feel like freedom. It felt like silence after too much noise. The police caught Mark in Arizona 4 days later. He was living under his middle name. using an expired ID, renting a cabin near Flagstaff. When they arrested him, he was calm, polite even. He told the detectives it was all a misunderstanding, that his accountant had mishandled funds. My name again, dragged through his teeth, one last time. Ruiz called me personally to tell me, "He's not going anywhere now," she said. I didn't feel relief, just a strange stillness, like the air after a storm that took everything it wanted. The trial moved fast. Corporate fraud, wire tampering, falsifying federal contracts. I didn't have to testify. My statements and the evidence were enough. But I went anyway, sat in the back row. Watched him in that suit I used to iron for him before board meetings. He didn't look at me once. He pled guilty in exchange for a shorter sentence. 12 years. I counted them silently like steps. 12 years for 6 years of my life. Fair trade, I guess. After the sentencing, Julie found me outside the courthouse. The sun was sharp, the air cold. "You did it," she said. "You faced it." "I covered for him for 6 years," I replied. "Facing it doesn't undo that." She shook her head. "No, but it's where people like us start over." I didn't have an answer. That night, I packed my desk into a single box, notebooks, 2 pens, 1 crack mug. I left the rest. I walked through the empty halls, past the conference room where everything had fallen apart. The walls still had those motivational posters about teamwork and integrity. I almost laughed. Before leaving, I opened my old folder marked Fix, the one with the first false entry I'd ever made. The calendar reminder was still there, 6 years overdue. I deleted it. The screen blinked once, and for a moment, the silence in the room felt clean. I stepped outside. It was snowing lightly, flakes settling on the pavement like dust over a grave. Across the street, a bakery was opening early, lights golden and warm. I stood there, breathing cold air that didn't taste like fear anymore. I thought about all the nights I'd stayed late, believing loyalty made me good, that silence made me safe. It never did. It just made me invisible. My phone buzzed. An email from Julie. No subject, no greeting, just 2 words. "You're free?" I smiled. Not big, not cinematic, just enough to feel it reach my eyes. I walked to my car, set the box in the passenger seat, and for the first time in years, didn't check my phone before starting the engine. As the city lights blurred behind me, I whispered it out loud, not for him, not for anyone, just to hear how it sounded in the air. No more covering for anyone.